I'm Nancy Schroeder. I'm the president of Edgewater Community Council. I've just completed my first year. I'm a 30-year resident of Edgewater.
Hello, I'm Aida Kulasic, and I'm the acting executive director of PCC.
Edgewater has changed a lot. When we first moved here, we had all kinds of languages. We had a lot of Hispanics. We had Russian Jews who had just come into the country who lived in Edgewater. We've had people from Africa, people from Bosnia, just a whole group, a whole bunch of different groups. Unfortunately, one of the things that's happening in Edgewater is that we're losing our affordable housing. We're on the lakefront. Our housing values are going up. A lot of our apartments are being turned to condo. So I think as we go forward, we'll probably see fewer of the immigrant, or less of the immigrant population coming in, because affordable housing is so key to that.
And there's several refugee agencies that are really close to Edgewater, and once the first refugees came and they saw that they could find them nice housing, they just stayed within the area. And once those refugees moved on, the new ones that came in took over their apartments, and the country's changed.
And we have great transportation.
Yeah, the red line is right there, and we can reach any part of the city.
How many L stops are there in Edgewater? Tough question. Huh?
Granville, Thorndale, Bryn Mawr, Berwyn. Wait a minute. Granville?
Foster stop? No.
Foster?
No, there's none at Foster. That's Berwyn. So we have 4 plus
Loyola.
Plus Loyola's
Loyola's
pretty
on the edge.
accessible. It's on the edge, so.
Okay. Right. And good bus service, Sheridan Road and
Sheridan,
streets.
Broadway, Clark.
Yeah. Yeah, transportation here is great.
The 147 is a fantastic bus.
The express one.
Yeah, just right downtown.
Do the immigrants who do come here tend to be in a certain part of the neighborhood? You mentioned Winthrop and Kenmore.
Most of the rental properties in Edgewater are along Winthrop and Kenmore, and that's where they stay until they move on, buy their own houses. And the schools that are in the area, they know by now how to help them when they first move to the country, how to help them with English, how to help the parents figure out some of the issues.
Yeah. So, years ago, there was a little bit more of a spreading out, but again, because a lot of the apartment buildings have turned condo, west of Broadway particularly, it is becoming more a Winthrop Kenmore environment.
And there are more and more condos on Winthrop and Kenmore, it seems, aren't there?
Yes.
I've noticed some buildings.
There are.
Yeah. Is a lot of the housing stock on Winthrop and Kenmore probably not likely to convert? 4+1s, for instance, don't always seem like the best candidates for condo conversions.
Actually, they're beginning to convert some of the 4+1s. Yes, a lot of the courtyard buildings have been converted already. They'll probably slow down with the economy. There are still some landlords in Edgewater, who have the courtyard buildings who are maintaining them as apartments. But every year we lose a couple. And we'll probably continue to do that even with the slowdown in the housing market.
Is the neighborhood less diverse as a result of that than it used to be?
From my viewpoint, it is.
I think that a lot of the families that do move here, if they decide to buy condos, they stay within Edgewater. So if they've been here for 5, 6, 7 years, they will still stay.
If they can afford it.
If they can afford it.
That's the key part. Huh?
That's the key, yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about the sort of housing stock and geography of Edgewater? It's really diverse in terms of housing, too, when you go from Sheridan Road west, say. What are the different sort of parts of the neighborhood, just physically in terms of housing?
When you look at Edgewater, you start at Sheridan Road, and that's primarily high-rises. Most of those were built in the late 60s, early 70s. Winthrop Kenmore has a really diverse housing stock. It's got a few of its single families left, those are disappearing. It's got a few of the 2 flats and 3 flats, again, those are disappearing. It's got courtyard buildings. Unfortunately, at one point back in the 60s, a lot of the older buildings were torn down and replaced with the 4+1s. And those really created a lot of issues and problems along with Kenmore. As you move west of Broadway, suddenly you go from a very dense community into really a small town kind of community where there are a lot of single family houses, mostly 2 flats, a few 6 flats, and a very few courtyard buildings, but it's a very neighborly community where people know each other, and you see people on the street that you know. It's a great community.
And you've been here 30 years. You still have neighbors who have been here for decades around you?
We used to be the new kids on the block. About 10 years ago, there was a pretty big changeover, so we only have a couple of our original neighbors left. But we do have a few. So, can I talk a little bit about Edgewater in our program, just very briefly? Yeah. ECC has a number of programs. We do a lot of different things in the community. We have an after-school arts program that's aimed mainly at lower-income children, and that's an example of some of their artwork. We also have a housing resource center where residents can call us if there are problem buildings in the neighborhood, and we work with the city and with the alderman's office to try to get those resolved. We mentioned our safety program. We also have an A-Trail program that we administer for the city, and that program provides for safety-related repairs for senior citizens so that they can remain in their home. And then we have our Planning and Development Committee, which basically we use as a community resource where the community can come in, look at plan development, and learn about it, and also voice their opinion on plan development. So those are some of our programs.